Hello everyone. If you struggle with negative thoughts, you are not alone. Negative thoughts are a universal phenomenon. Most people have at least 35,000 negative thoughts a day. Psychologists have written thousands of self-improvement books that have offered little help to most people. The fundamental mistake is false belief in who we are. In psychology, the self is believed to be the ego. In this channel, the path is different from conventional cognitive therapies in psychology. Like modern medicine, psychology deals with symptoms. This fundamental error is not only in psychology, but most of our ordinary thinking is the assumption that the ego or thinking mind is the true self. In psychology, the ego is generally considered to be the center of a person's identity and the mediator between the demands of reality, the ID, instinctive drives, and the superego, moral consciousness. The goal of many psychological therapies is to help individuals develop a stronger, healthier ego that can cope with life's challenges. However, on the path of knowledge, the ego is seen as a false construct, a mental creation that obscures our true nature. In this view, identification with the ego is the root cause of suffering because it creates a sense of separation, lack, and conflict. The ego is always trying to protect and strengthen itself, leading to a constant state of fear, desire, and dissatisfaction. We must see through the illusion of the ego and realize our true nature as the omnipresent, unchanging awareness into which all experiences arise and subside. This is seen as the path to true peace, wholeness, and fulfillment. Psychological therapy can be helpful in understanding and working with conditioned patterns of the mind. However, psychology alone is not sufficient for true liberation, as it still operates within the framework of the ego. We need a more radical shift in perspective, a recognition of the utter unreality of the ego, and a shift toward the true self beyond all mental constructs. Psychology generally aims to improve ego functioning, while we aim to transcend the ego altogether. From this point of view, ultimate psychological health is the realization of the lack of an ideal self, that is, the ego. Thus, on this path of self-awareness, we realize who we are and negative thoughts disappear. If we know that thoughts are not our thoughts, thoughts do not affect us at all. The only reason our thoughts are unbearable sometimes is that we think they are our thoughts. It is this belief alone that gives power to thoughts. However, there is a practice to eliminate any persistent and negative thinking. By observing thoughts without judgment, we detach from negativity. In meditation, we observe the thought, recognizing that it has arisen in our consciousness. We do not resent or react to it. We recognize that thoughts are just thoughts. They do not define our reality. Meditation is a great way to break negative thought patterns because when we meditate, we relax our body and mind. When our body is relaxed and thoughts arise, we recognize the thoughts but do not resist them by resenting or reacting to them. On the spiritual path of knowledge, in order to achieve liberation, we do not need to fight or eliminate negative thoughts. Instead, the invitation is simply to observe them with gentle, non-reactive awareness. When a negative thought arises in meditation, we acknowledge its presence but do not engage with it. We don't try to push it away, but we also don't react to it or get hooked on its story. It is like watching clouds pass in the sky. We see them, but they don't catch us. We allow them to come and go without judgment or resistance. And just like clouds, we recognize that thoughts are temporary phenomena. They arise, remain for a while, and then dissipate on their own. In psychology, cognitive therapy can be useful in many ways. Its focus is on actively challenging and replacing negative thoughts with positive ones. And while this may provide relief in the short term, it doesn't necessarily address the underlying habit of mind that continues to generate negative thoughts. It's a bit like playing a game. You shoot down one negative thought, but then another pops up, and another, and another. Because the fundamental pattern of reactivity has not been addressed, the mind continues to come up with new variations of the same old stories. The fundamental pattern of reactivity is seen as the key mechanism that perpetuates illusion and the suffering that results from it. This reactivity is rooted in misidentification with the egoic mind and its habitual patterns of thought and feeling. Here's how this pattern usually plays out. Identification with thoughts. The mind creates a constant stream of thoughts, and we unconsciously identify with those thoughts, believing them to be real and thinking of them as our own. We get caught up in the narratives and stories in which the mind spins, losing sight of our true nature as an awareness of consciousness within which these thoughts appear. Thoughts trigger emotional reactions, which can range from subtle changes in mood to intense emotions such as anger, fear, or despair. We identify with these feelings, feeding them with our attention and beliefs, and creating a feedback loop that amplifies their intensity. Driven by our thoughts and feelings, we react by engaging in patterns of action that reinforce our sense of separateness. This could manifest as an outburst of anger, withdrawal in fear, or seeking validation through achievement or approval. Through this cycle of thinking, feeling, and acting, we create and maintain a personal identity based on our mental and emotional patterns, which we then defend and uphold, promoting the illusion that there is an ego. As long as this fundamental reactivity remains unexamined, suffering persists. We remain trapped in cycles of craving and aversion, forever seeking happiness in external circumstances and resisting what is, ignoring the peace and wholeness that is our true nature. The invitation is to recognize this pattern of reactivity as it arises and to address it with presence and inquiry. By bringing awareness to our thoughts and feelings, we create space around them and loosen their grip. We begin to disidentify with the stories of the mind and rest in the spaciousness of pure awareness. As we do this, the fundamental reactivity begins to dissolve. We find that we can meet life's experiences with greater calmness, compassion, and wisdom. We discover the freedom and peace that comes when we no longer perceive thoughts as our own and rest in the awareness of our consciousness that is our true self. This is a gradual process of uncovering the mind's conditioned patterns and awakening to our true nature beyond the ego. It involves cultivating awareness, self-exploration, and a willingness to let go of our cherished beliefs and identities. The path of self-knowledge goes straight to the root. By cultivating a space of non-reactive awareness, we begin to untangle ourselves from all the play of thought. We begin to see that we are not our thoughts. We are the observer who has a vast peaceful awareness and is always present behind the negative mental chatter. And as we rest more and more in this awareness, an amazing thing happens. The grip of negative thoughts begins to loosen on its own. We don't need to fight them or replace them. We simply stop feeding them with our attention and reactivity. And gradually, the mind begins to calm down, like cloudy water becomes clear. This is the promise of the path of self-awareness. We will experience a fundamental shift from identifying with the thoughts of the mind to resting as the awareness of our consciousness. It is a journey of letting go of the habit of identifying with thoughts. And while it's not always easy, the freedom it offers is truly revolutionary. So the next time you sit down to meditate and a negative thought comes up, experiment with this approach. Acknowledge the thought, but don't dwell on it. Don't try to resist it, but don't cling to it either. Just let it be, and rest in the spaciousness of your awareness. With practice, you may begin to discover a deep peace and clarity that is always here, beneath the waves of the mind. A peace that doesn't depend on thinking good thoughts or eliminating bad ones, but that comes naturally when we stop fighting our experience and start allowing it to be just as it is. This is the heart of the path of knowledge. It is a radical acceptance of what is presented to our consciousness. It is a deep trust in the inherent normality of life, and it is available to each of us at any moment, whatever thoughts are passing through our minds. So don't believe in the stories of your mind. You are more vast and free than any thought could suggest. Keep practicing, keep letting go, and keep resting in the spaciousness of your true nature. The peace you seek is already here. Created by Elias Stasinos. Thank you for following me on this spiritual quest.